Hey everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Six Path Weeb, and if you're new here, this is the place where we dive deep into the worlds of Naruto, explore what-if scenarios, and imagine the stories that could have been. Today, we're continuing a fanfic series that's captured a lot of imagination. What if Naruko became the queen of the Jinchūriki? Part 3. In this series, we're exploring an alternate reality where Naruko rises to power in ways that completely reshape the shinobi world. From unexpected alliances to battles that test the limits of her strength and leadership, this story challenges everything we know about the Jinchūriki and the path of destiny. Before we dive in, I want to make a quick disclaimer: everything on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage, music, or official material used in these videos. All credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders, and this is purely a space to share ideas, theories, and fanfiction fun. So, if you've ever wondered what it would be like if the tables were turned, if power, strategy, and courage collided in ways we never saw in canon, this is the video for you. We're going to break down every twist, every decision, and every consequence that comes with Naruko becoming the queen of the Jinchūriki. Alright, grab your kunai, sit back, and let's jump into part 3 of this epic what-if scenario. The girl who would be hero. The rain tumbled softly over the village training fields, turning the paths into slick puddles that reflected the gray sky above. Only the most careful and skilled shinobi could navigate the slippery paths without slipping, but for Naruko, it was an adventure. She leapt across the muddy stones with nimble grace, her bright orange scarf whipping behind her like a tiny flame. She paused at the top of a hill, watching a shadowed figure approach. Tall and quiet, the figure wore a long cloak that hid most of their face, but Naruko could feel their calm confidence even from afar. "Did you train as hard as you promised?" the figure asked, a smile hidden in the shadows. "Of course," Naruko replied, bouncing on the balls of her feet. Her eyes sparkled with determination. "I've been practicing my new wind jutsu. I want to be ready for anything." The figure nodded slowly. "Good. That spirit will take you far. But remember, being strong isn't just about power, it's about heart, teamwork, and clever thinking." Naruko's grin widened. "I know. That's what makes being a ninja so exciting. I'm going to show everyone in the village that I can do it, my way." Meanwhile, in the great council tower of the 5 villages, the leaders were gathered. They sat around a curved table, each representing their village with symbols of wind, water, fire, earth, and lightning. The room was serious, but the energy of new ideas and plans was almost like a crackling current. "This summit is important," Mifune, the moderator, began. "It's a chance for all villages to share knowledge, prevent misunderstandings, and work together to keep our land safe and peaceful." Each leader nodded in turn. There was Lady Mizuno of Water Village, who studied everyone carefully, her clever mind always thinking several steps ahead. Next to her was Raijin of the Lightning Village, his strong presence a reminder that true strength also comes from protection and responsibility. There was Hikari of Fire Village, always eager to inspire others with her creativity, and Tetsu of Earth Village, who reminded them all that patience and steady work were just as important as quick action. The summit wasn't about fighting, it was about cooperation, about learning how to solve big problems together. And outside, young ninjas like Naruko trained and prepared, dreaming of the day they could step forward and make a difference. Naruko took a deep breath of the cool, rainy air. Her heart raced with excitement, not fear. She knew that challenges were coming, but she also knew that with friends, mentors, and clever thinking, she could face anything. With a laugh, she darted down the hill, ready to show the village her newest tricks. Because being a ninja wasn't about being the strongest, it was about being brave, kind, and smart. And Naruko was ready to be a hero. Once they had begun, Naruko's mentor had brought both of Kumo's Jinchūriki, Ni Yugito, a clever and daring ward of the Yatsuki clan, and her younger brother B, under careful supervision in Kumagakura for nearly 2 years. Naruko herself had watched over them, making sure they trained safely and stayed out of trouble, while also keeping an eye on reports from neighboring villages about missing Jinchūriki. 2 years passed of careful observation, gentle guidance, and daily lessons in teamwork and responsibility. Naruko learned patience in ways she never had before, listening to B's endless chatter about music and fun, and hearing Yugito's inventive plans for ninja missions. Finally, the day came when it felt safe enough for B to return to life in Unraikyo Pass and for Yugito to resume her assignments, though Naruko insisted at least one trusted mentor accompany her on each mission, just to make sure she stayed safe. A year later, B had been sending cheerful letters, and Yugito returned from missions without incident. Naruko allowed herself to relax a little, believing that both were thriving under careful watch. But then, a troubling report arrived. Yugito had not returned from a routine mission. And soon, it was revealed that something had gone wrong. Her companion had been found in a mysterious situation, and Naruko had the difficult task of informing her guardian. Naruko called for a summit of the five kage, determined to understand what had happened and how to protect the remaining Jinchūriki. As she looked around the room, she saw the leaders of the other hidden villages and studied them carefully. The Mizukage, keeping Kiri protected, careful not to reveal too much about her village's inner workings. The Tsuchikage, set in his ways, cautious but wise, weighing the needs of his people above all else. The Hokage, responsible and steady, having kept the Kyubi Jinchūriki safe for the time being. The Kazekage, open and honest, providing information about potential dangers despite the risk. Naruko spoke firmly, her voice carrying a mix of determination and concern. We have to know where your allegiances lie. The safety of the Jinchūriki, and our villages, depends on it. There was tension in the room. Arguments and defenses were raised, but Naruko listened carefully, noting every detail and every nuance. She understood that trust wasn't given lightly, and that each cage had their own reasons for the choices they had made. Suddenly, a shadow appeared at the edge of the room. A figure with striking orange hair, wearing a black cloak marked with red clouds, stepped forward. Naruko's eyes widened. She recognized the eyes immediately. Rinnegan. I am Pain, the figure announced, voice calm but commanding. And I am here to test your resolve. Naruko took a deep breath. She stepped forward, her hands clenched in determination, not for battle, but for understanding. We will protect our friends, she said firmly. We will work together. No one gets left behind. The room was tense, but Naruko's courage inspired the cage. They nodded, realizing that cooperation and trust were the strongest tools they had. Plans were made, not to fight, but to safeguard, to strategize, and to ensure that every Jinchūriki could live safely and continue to grow. Naruko smiled to herself, feeling a warmth in her chest. This was her mission, not just to protect, but to bring unity, hope, and courage to everyone around her. And she would not let anything, or anyone, stand in the way of that. At the far edge of the training arena, a group of tall, armor-clad figures moved carefully, led by a person almost identical to them, except for the curious horns perched on their helmet. They were trying to capture a mysterious blue-haired figure, if she could even be called that. The girl, Naruko, had the head and torso of a normal person, but the rest of her body shimmered and transformed into hundreds of delicate sheets of paper. The sheets floated into the air, folding themselves into whirling shuriken, paper birds, and other intricate shapes that danced around the room. The leader of the armored squad raised his swords, confident he could stop her, but before he could act, Naruko dissolved entirely into the paper, letting the sheets gently swirl around the squad. The paper didn't hurt anyone, it simply wrapped around them, forming shapes that made them slip, tumble, and laugh in surprise. After a few moments, the paper flew apart and reformed into Naruko, standing proudly in the center of the arena, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve. The only sign of worry on her face was a tiny frown, as if she regretted the chaos she had caused, not because anyone was hurt, but because she wished she didn't startle them so much. Is this what peace looks like? She whispered to herself, watching the armored figures untangle themselves and nod at her with reluctant admiration. Elsewhere in the arena, a group of heroes had just sprung into action, led by the tall and powerful Reikage. He leapt from pile to pile of floating rubble, lightning shimmering around him, not to fight, but to guide and redirect the enormous magical creatures Naruko's opponents had summoned. Giant birds and multi-legged beasts appeared, but they didn't attack with malice. Instead, they chased each other, spun in mid-air, and played a kind of magical tag. The Reikage dashed and jumped, using his lightning armor to gently push the creatures into safe zones, keeping everyone out of danger. Nearby, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Temari were experimenting with their own magic. Streams of colorful energy flew through the air, bouncing off the paper shapes Naruko's opponents created. One of the orange-haired figures summoned strange, long, tendril-like forms, but Naruko cleverly weaved her sheets into soft barriers, redirecting the energy safely and transforming the tendrils into floating ribbons that twirled harmlessly around the arena. Baki, another young hero, found himself in a tricky spot when one of the orange-haired figures sent a glowing ribbon toward him. Instead of a dangerous attack, it gently wrapped him in a cocoon of sparkling light. Naruko was nearby, using her paper magic to lift him up and spin him playfully in the air. He giggled despite the initial shock. All around, the arena was a whirlwind of color, movement, and clever tricks, but no one was hurt. Every battle was really a contest of skill, creativity, and clever thinking. Naruko darted between her opponents, folding paper into clever solutions, transforming chaotic energy into artful shapes, and guiding everyone toward understanding rather than conflict. By the end of the day, the arena was filled with laughter, sparkling paper, and floating lights. Naruko looked at the exhausted but happy crowd. This is what peace feels like, she said, smiling for the first time that day. And in that moment, every hero, summoned creature, and once mysterious opponent realized that strength wasn't about fighting, it was about creativity, teamwork, and caring for each other. "Are you okay, Ma?" Jiraiya asked, glancing at his left shoulder. The giant toad beside him gave a small, croaky nod, though it seemed a bit tired from the earlier chaos. The trio turned their attention to the two mysterious figures who were watching them with curious eyes. "Interesting," the short-haired figure said, tilting her head. The long-haired companion added, speaking in the same calm tone, "What kind of technique is that?" Jiraiya chuckled, and the toad puffed up its cheeks, ready to demonstrate. Instead of fire and destruction, a playful spray of sparkling water shot into the air, swirling and twirling in a colorful display that made the two figures blink in surprise. The water danced around them harmlessly, forming shapes of clouds, stars, and tiny toads, which bounced back to Jiraiya's side. Naruko, who had been quietly watching from the edge of the scene, stepped forward. Her bright eyes sparkled with excitement, her signature headband catching the sunlight. "That's amazing, Jiraiya," she exclaimed. "Can I try next?" Jiraiya smiled warmly at her enthusiasm. "Of course, Naruko. But remember, control is just as important as power." Naruko took a deep breath, then focused her chakra carefully. A gentle wave of energy radiated from her hands, forming glowing shapes that hovered above the ground. The two mysterious figures leaned in, their expressions softening with curiosity instead of fear. The long-haired figure finally spoke. You have a unique skill." Naruko grinned. "Thanks. I'm learning to use my energy to help people, not hurt them." Meanwhile, Aniki, the Tsuchikage, floated down from above, his face a mixture of concern and relief. "Everyone is safe? Good. Safety first, always." The group gathered closer as Jiraiya introduced them. "Naruko here has a big heart and a brave spirit. She's learning what it means to be a ninja who protects her friends and village." Naruko's eyes widened as she looked at the assembled shinobi and samurai. I want to help too." One of the figures nodded encouragingly. "Then let's work together. With teamwork and trust, we can accomplish anything, without anyone getting hurt." As the sun peeked through the clouds, Naruko stood tall, feeling a new sense of courage. She had learned that being a ninja wasn't about fighting or winning, it was about protecting, helping, and growing stronger with friends by her side. "And together," she said, looking at her mentors and new friends, "we can make the world a better place." The group smiled, and with that, Naruko prepared for her next big adventure, ready to face challenges with cleverness, heart, and a little sparkle of her own magic. The wind blew hard, swirling snow and dust into the air, mixing into a gray haze that settled gently over the village ruins. Among the shinobi, shadows of her friends, clones created to help, moved carefully through the rubble, guiding the injured to safety. Everything was quiet except for the soft crunch of snow underfoot, yet in Naruko's heart, a storm raged. "Yugito?" Daru called softly, eyes wide. How are you here? We thought you were gone." Naruko glanced down, her golden hair falling across her face as she sighed. "I don't remember exactly," she admitted, voice small. "After Atsui. Everything's a blur." She hugged herself, shivering slightly from the cold, and from old memories she didn't want to revisit. Daru stayed quiet, sensing she needed space, though his steady presence was comforting. "I tried everything I could," Naruko continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes, things don't go the way we hope. I'm just lucky to be here." She trailed off, lost in thought, remembering moments of struggle that felt far heavier than her young shoulders could bear. Just then, a warm pair of arms wrapped around her. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise, but then softened. She felt safe, sheltered, and understood. It was Daru, steady and calm, the kind of person you could always trust to be there when the world felt too heavy. Nearby, Utakata frowned, watching from a distance. He didn't know what to say or how to help Naruko, and it made him restless. He almost acted impulsively, but then Han, Naruko's tall and kind uncle, gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I would prefer if you didn't make her feel unsafe," Han said calmly. "She's had a long day." Utakata's frown faltered, realizing he'd been too tense. He let out a quiet breath and lowered his hands, focusing instead on keeping Naruko safe in his own quiet way. Han's calm wisdom seemed to settle everything around them, and even Utakata couldn't help but feel a little lighter. She needs friends she can rely on, Han continued, watching Naruko doze peacefully against Jiru's shoulder. Being there for her, just being kind and patient, is the best way to show you care. Utakata nodded slowly. He stepped closer, his heart pounding in a nervous but hopeful rhythm. He wasn't sure what to say yet, but he knew one thing: Naruko wasn't alone. She had people who would listen, people who would stay, and people who would always cheer her on, even when the world felt gray. And Naruko, wrapped in warmth and care, finally allowed herself to breathe. For the first time that day, she felt like she could face the future, with friends, family, and the courage inside her heart guiding the way. Naruko stood there, grinning like a whirlwind, her bright eyes sparkling as she faced the two figures who had always seemed so distant, yet were now right in front of her. These were the people she had long wondered about, people she had once believed were unreachable, and yet somehow connected to her own story. Despite her cheerful exterior, Naruko carried a quiet longing in her heart. She had grown up without the gentle guidance of family. She had dreamed, often late at night, of someone who would welcome her home, help her untangle her worries, and celebrate her small victories. She had wanted someone to understand her, to see her not just as a ninja in training, but as her. When she was younger, Naruko had often asked about her parents. The orphanage staff could only tell her fragments of a story, about brave parents who had served the village, about children who sometimes grew up without their mothers and fathers, and about the traditions that came with carrying a family name. Naruko had listened quietly, nodding along, but she hadn't let those unanswered questions stop her. She had chosen to grow, to learn, and to become strong in her own way. Now, standing before the Reikage and the Mizukage, Naruko felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, holding out her hand. "I'm Uzumaki Naruko," she said with a warm smile, her voice steady. "It's really nice to meet you. Yugito told me a lot about both of you." For a moment, the Reikage just stared, unsure how to respond. Naruko's hand hovered in the air before she gently lowered it, chuckling at her own forwardness. "I guess I'm still learning how to make first impressions," she admitted with a sheepish smile. "You are the Kyubi Jinchūriki," the Reikage said carefully, studying her. "I thought you might be difficult to approach." Naruko shrugged, glancing toward Tsunade, who stood nearby with a worried look. "I guess people sometimes worry too much about things they don't understand. I'm really not so different from everyone else." The Mizukage, Mei, stepped closer, curiosity shining in her eyes. "You don't seem to be on bad terms with your village, though." Naruko paused, thinking about the years she had spent feeling alone and misunderstood. "I wasn't always treated the way I hoped," she admitted softly. "But that doesn't mean I stopped caring. I just learned to care for myself first, so I could care for others better later." Tsunade let out a relieved sigh, her shoulders relaxing as she smiled gently at Naruko. "You've grown so much. We only wanted to protect you, even when it was hard to explain why. We were afraid you might get hurt, and maybe we overthought it." Naruko's grin returned, brighter than before. "It's okay. I understand now. And I'm ready to move forward, ready to make connections, make mistakes, and learn from them. Life's too short to stay angry or alone." And in that moment, surrounded by leaders, mentors, and the people she had once longed to know, Naruko felt a spark of something wonderful, the beginning of family, of friendship, and of a journey that was hers to shape. "She's a shinobi, and none of the previous Jinchūriki had any trouble," Jiraiya said firmly, glaring at the tiny man in front of him. "Because your Shodai was alive to prevent the connection from being made with the previous children," Yagura shouted, and suddenly, the other shinobi who weren't from Konoha began to understand the situation. "Then we have to stop her," the Reikage said, raising a hand as if to strike, but before he could act, all the other Jinchūriki, including Yugito, formed a protective circle around the young girl. "No," Naruko said, her eyes bright and steady, almost daring him to try anything. "I'm not like the stories you've heard. I don't have the connection anymore," Naruko explained, drawing the attention of everyone present, except Yagura. Mei shook her head thoughtfully, stepping forward. "Once a child, always a child," Mei said, her voice heavy with regret. "All the Kekkei Genkai clans born of a child in Kiri tried to sever the connection, but every attempt ended badly. Not even my own clans, from both my mother and father, could do it safely." "What connection?" Jiraiya asked, his toad companions hopping off his shoulders to get a better view. "And what are these children you keep talking about?" Asked the toad on his right, sounding curious. They're the children of Jinchūriki, Naruko explained, drawing everyone's focus back to her. When a Jinchūriki has a child, that child has a connection to the bijou inside their parent. They sometimes develop special abilities too, usually tied to elemental jutsu. What? Tsunade said, her eyes wide with surprise. That can't be. My grandfather had wood release, but he wasn't a Jinchūriki. And my father didn't show any special abilities like that. Your grandfather was the Senju Hashirama, Yagura said calmly. That explains it. Your grandfather could work with bijou and control their chakra. Because of that, your chakra has similar properties, even if your father didn't. But that still doesn't explain Naruko's situation, the toad on the left said. Yagura sighed. When a child learns to draw on their parents' bijou energy, it can put a lot of strain on the parent. We had one Jinchūriki who struggled under the pressure, and the child kept using the energy until, well, the bijou became unstable. It's complicated, but basically, it's dangerous if not managed carefully. Which is why I had half my connection sealed, Naruko said softly. It made things safer for everyone, though it left me weaker at first. Later, we restored the connection safely with guidance, so I'm fine now. Did it work? Mei asked, hope shining in her eyes. Wouldn't be standing here if it didn't, Naruko replied with a small smile. Yagura raised his hands to refocus everyone. Moving on, this attack isn't just random. Akatsuki is trying to send a message. Without the bijou, they aren't as strong, but they still plan carefully. That's why an alliance is necessary. But can we trust everyone? I asked, looking around. This alliance is only for this mission, Yagura explained. Once Madara is dealt with, everyone returns to their hidden villages. What about you? Jiraiya asked. You'll be part of this alliance too? Of course, Yagura said. We'll go back together to ensure no village acts against the others, and to draw Madara out of hiding. Naruko muttered under her breath, but it was more playful than upset. I'm not going back to Taki, Fu declared firmly. My life has been full of adventure since leaving. I want to keep growing. You're free to join us in Konoha, Tsunade said kindly. I think Naruko would be happy to have you along. Naruko glanced at Fu and nodded. I agree. And leadership? Mei asked, looking at Yagura. He shook his head. I'm retired. This will be a democracy. I will lead the alliance. Who? Aniki growled. Shut up, old man, Chio teased, tapping him on the head. A is the most qualified. The others have experience, but A has the calm, smart judgment needed for this mission. Then it's settled, Yagura said. We leave for the land of lightning in a week, together. Tamari glanced anywhere but at the lone figure walking through the trees of the land of fire, moving toward the land of wind and Suna. How are you? She asked, her voice catching slightly as she tried to start a conversation with her youngest sibling, the one who had been thought lost years ago. I am well, Naruko replied calmly, her eyes on the path ahead. And you? Tamari blinked, astonished. Well? That's it? No, I missed you? No, it's good to see you again? Naruko tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I have been traveling and learning. My current state can best be described as well. My journey is not something I can share just yet. Tamari groaned, running a hand through her hair. He's got you there, Missy. Chio called from a few steps behind, walking with her usual sharp-eyed authority. But she does have a point. Suna has been looking for you all this time. A little gratitude is expected. I apologize, Naruko said politely, glancing briefly at the older woman. I did not mean to worry anyone. I hope my absence has not caused difficulties. Chio harumphed but said nothing more, and the group continued walking in silence until Naruko spoke again. With the Kazekage gone, who will step forward to lead Suna and join the alliance? Tamari asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and disbelief. I will, Chio answered simply. Naruko raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the confidence in her mentor's voice. Chio nodded at Naruko's questioning look. Because of the challenges Suna faced years ago, few are truly ready to lead. The ones capable are me, my brother, and your siblings. Still doesn't answer my question, Naruko said calmly. Kankuro, skilled as he is, isn't suited to lead. And Tamari, though bright and strong, is not yet experienced enough to hold the Kazekage's responsibilities, Chio explained, stopping to rest under a small grove. Naruko and Tamari flanked her, listening intently. You, however, Naruko said thoughtfully, have the wisdom, strength, and heart to guide others. Interesting. So I'm still technically considered missing? Not exactly, Chio laughed softly. For now, everyone thinks you're gone. It keeps certain politics simpler. Naruko nodded. Then I am free to travel, to learn, and to grow without constraints. Yes, Chio agreed, frowning slightly. But you will not forget your home. Suna has a place for you, always. I will return, Naruko promised, her voice quiet but firm. But only when I am ready to serve, not before. Chio's eyes softened, though her sternness remained. And that, Naruko, is why you will come back safely. You are part of Suna, no matter where your path takes you. Elsewhere, Yugito and her team were trekking through the mountains. She paused, gathering her thoughts, and spoke with heartfelt honesty. I'm sorry I wasn't able to return sooner, Yugito said, her voice gentle. I wasn't strong enough to help when I first recovered. But now, I am here. I nodded quietly, his expression calm. What matters is that you are here now. Yugito felt a small warmth in her chest, encouraged by his words. Daru, standing behind her, blinked in surprise but quickly recovered, stepping into formation. Up ahead, the team noticed the valley below. A sudden obstacle in the path, fallen rocks and a wild river, prompted them to act together, testing their skills and teamwork in a safe, playful way. Yugito lit her rosary beads with her chakra, creating glowing arcs that helped guide her friends across the uneven terrain. Careful, everyone. She called, leading the way. Each teammate followed, laughing and encouraging one another. They moved in perfect rhythm, discovering new strengths and learning to trust each other. When they reached the other side, Yugito glanced at B, who had been helping clear the path. Next time, save the rhymes for practice, she teased, smiling as B sheepishly laughed. Agreed, he said, dusting himself off. But, thanks for leading the way. Yugito smiled back. In that moment, she realized that strength wasn't about fighting or winning, it was about helping others grow, finding courage in themselves, and discovering joy in the journey. So how's this going to work? Utakata's voice floated across the gentle waves as the ferry approached the land of water. Chojuro glanced at him, puzzled, while Yagura sat quietly, his expression thoughtful. What do you mean? Mei asked softly, watching him from the side. I disappeared for a while, and Yagura is considered the former Yondaime, Utakata said, making air quotes around former. Surely it can't be as simple as us just walking back into Kiri and pretending nothing happened. Yagura frowned, and Mei shrugged. Ao, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Since the new Godime took office, your absence was understood. Normally, a team would have come to ask you to return, but after the recent disturbances. It's complicated. His tone was careful, clearly showing that handling missing Nin was not his favorite task. Utakata nodded, though he didn't look directly at Ao. Utakata's right, Yagura added, drawing Mei's attention. His presence can be explained. Mine, however. That is tricky, Mei said, frowning. While Kiri has been growing calmer and more peaceful, there are still those who miss the old ways. Your return might raise questions, and not everyone will feel comfortable. Kiri's rebuilding process had been slow but steady, Chojuro added quietly, especially after everything the village has gone through. Exactly, Ao said, nodding. Many people may wish for your return as Mizukage, but it could create tension. Peaceful progress is fragile, and any sudden change could undo it. Maybe you could stay with the daimyo for a while? Mei suggested, though Yagura's expression darkened. No, he said firmly, taking a deep breath. That wouldn't help. He may be understanding, but he's not one to step in when matters of trust are at stake. I will return to Kiri alongside Utakata. There's no other way. Utakata may not be fully trusted yet, but I can handle what comes my way. How? You were in charge before, Utakata asked, curiosity piqued. Simple, Yagura said with a faint smile. By explaining the circumstances honestly. People need to know I wasn't acting alone. Not simple, Mei countered, folding her arms. Some already suspect, and confirming their fears lightly could backfire. We must handle this delicately. Politics, Utakata muttered with a grin, nudging Chojuro lightly, who stammered an embarrassed reply. Meanwhile, Ao leaned closer. The Hunter Division is still wary of your absence. I guessed as much, Utakata replied, staring at the horizon. Things got complicated while you were occupied elsewhere. But in the end, it wasn't anyone's fault entirely. Ao raised an eyebrow, silently asking for clarification. Yagura was dealing with a very unusual situation, one beyond anyone's control, Utakata explained. The result was unexpected, but no one meant for anyone to get hurt. Ao considered this, nodding slowly. Thank you for explaining. The important part is that everyone survived, and no one intended harm. That is what matters most. The group fell into thoughtful silence, looking out at the shimmering water. Each wondered how the return of these two extraordinary shinobi, Utakata and Yagura, would influence the village. The future felt uncertain, but in a way that promised growth, learning, and the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. Naruko walked a few steps behind Tsunade and Jiraiya, her bright orange jacket fluttering slightly in the wind. Fu walked beside her, glancing curiously at the gates of Konoha coming into view. The silence between them felt heavy, like clouds waiting to burst with rain, but it wasn't unpleasant. It was the kind of silence that made her think. So, Naruko, what's it like in your village? Fu asked quietly, breaking the pause. Back in Taki, we didn't know much about Konoha, just that it's one of the 5 great hidden villages. Naruko shrugged, her blue eyes sparkling with a mix of pride and shyness. It's big, busy, and full of people who care about each other, even if they don't always show it the right way. That's what I've learned. Jiraiya chuckled, looking back at her. That's true. It's hard to explain Konoha without seeing it. If you want, Tsunade could give you both a proper tour. Naruko shook her head quickly, stepping closer to Fu. No, that's okay. I like seeing things at my own pace. There's a lot to notice when you're walking instead of being guided. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, frowning, but Naruko didn't look fazed. She'd always had a way of standing her ground, even when others were bigger, stronger, or older. The older woman folded her arms. I still don't understand why you care so much about doing things on your own, Naruko. Sometimes it's good to let others help. Naruko smiled softly, her eyes thoughtful. I know. But I've learned that I also need to learn how to trust myself. And sometimes, learning from mistakes is part of that. Jiraiya's face softened. She's grown a lot, you know. I've seen her face impossible challenges and still keep moving forward. Naruko felt warmth rise in her cheeks but didn't look away. I guess. I just want to be the kind of ninja who makes people proud, not just by winning fights, but by helping others. By being strong in ways that matter. Fu smiled, impressed. You really think about that stuff, don't you? Naruko grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief. Of course. That's the fun part about being a ninja, you can help people and have adventures. Who doesn't like that? The gates of Konoha loomed ahead, and Naruko took a deep breath. She felt a little nervous, but mostly excited. Every step toward the village reminded her of her journey, not just the battles she had faced, but the friends she had made, the lessons she had learned, and the person she was becoming. She glanced at Fu. Ready to see the village? Fu nodded. Yeah. Let's go. As they walked forward together, the sun shone brightly over Konoha, casting long, playful shadows behind them. Naruko felt a flutter of hope in her chest. She had a dream, and no matter what challenges came her way, she knew she would face them with courage, heart, and a little bit of mischief. Because that's what heroes were made of, and Naruko was just getting started. Minato wouldn't have. What? Researched whether children of Jinchūriki were affected by the bijou? Tried to find a way for it to work without anyone getting hurt? Studied different seals to use on Kyuubi? Tell me, which of those things doesn't sound like something he would do? Naruko asked, her voice trembling with frustration. Minato would have looked into all of that to protect you. Jiraiya argued, his face set in determination. Protect me? Really? Naruko laughed, a soft, bitter sound that shook her from head to toe. She straightened, her amber eyes glinting with a mixture of amusement and sorrow. There were at least a dozen different seals he could have used, ways to keep everyone safe, without him being at risk. But he didn't ask my mother. The woman he would have put in danger just by trying. He loved your mother, and she loved him, Jiraiya said firmly, his voice rising slightly. He looked at Naruko, wondering if she had truly healed from her past struggles, or if anger still lingered in her heart. If he truly loved her, she wouldn't have had to risk so much, Naruko replied softly, her gaze dropping. Her words hung in the air like a fragile cloud, giving Jiraiya pause. Naruko felt a strange pull of tension in her chest, a memory of harsh lessons and misunderstandings. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and focused on the warmth of the sun above the treetops. Fu stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on Naruko's shoulder. Before I met Naruko, she began, her voice steady, I thought being a Jinchūriki meant I was something other than human, A tool meant only to serve the village. I didn't think about myself as a person, and I certainly didn't expect others to see me that way. But meeting Naruko showed me how wrong I was. We are more than what we were given at birth, more than the roles others assign us. She met Jiraiya and his companion's eyes with quiet determination. Knowing this, Naruko has every right to think and feel what she does about her parents and her past. Who are we to tell her otherwise? Jiraiya nodded slowly. I understand. But some things are guided by love, even if they appear flawed. Minato made choices he believed were best, even if we didn't see the whole picture. Naruko smiled faintly, the corners of her lips turning upward. Facts can be true, but truth is more complicated. I've learned that from people I trust. I've also learned that I can choose my own path, no matter the past. Good, Jiraiya said quietly, a small smile forming. With Fu supporting her, Naruko took her first steps down the path toward the hidden village. Her pace was steady, each step carrying the quiet strength of someone who had faced doubt, confusion, and anger, and had chosen growth instead of resentment. As the tree swayed gently in the breeze, Naruko lifted her chin. She didn't need to erase her past to move forward, she only needed to carry it with her, shaped into something powerful and positive. Dear YouTube family, this is all for now. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world and helps me keep creating. Thank you for being part of this journey. Warm regards. 6 Path Weeb.